Donald Trump's long-standing relationship with Boeing has certainly had more than its share of turbulence.
The announcement from Boeing's chief executive, Kelly Ortberg, that the company would be forced to shut down production in the United States came as a thunderclap across the global economy. The immediate cause was not a technological failure, not a collapse of demand, nor a scandal of mismanagement. Instead, it was the direct consequence of a new economic reality reshaped by U.S. trade policy under the newly elected president, Donald Trump. With sweeping tariffs imposed on America's trade partners and equally forceful retaliatory tariffs enacted in return, the aerospace giant found itself suddenly cut off from the lifeblood of its industry, access to affordable materials and global buyers. The revelation was more than just a headline. It marked a turning point in how deeply interconnected industries could unravel when politics collides with production. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. For decades, Boeing symbolized America's industrial and technological prowess. Its jets filled the fleets of airlines from Asia to Europe. Its defense contracts underscored U.S. military dominance, and its economic footprint spread through supply chains reaching into every corner of the globe. Yet Ortberg's admission laid bare the precarious balance on which such dominance rested. Aerospace is inherently international. Titanium from Russia, electronics from East Asia, precision parts from European subcontractors, and markets in fast-growing regions such as the Middle East and Southeast Asia. When tariffs suddenly inflated the cost of imported materials and foreign governments slapped levies on American-made planes, Boeing's finely tuned global equation collapsed. The immediate impact was staggering. Planes that once sold competitively on the global market became prohibitively expensive. Airlines accustomed to negotiating large orders for fleets of 737s, 777s, or the state-of-the-art 787 Dreamliners now faced price tags inflated by double-digit percentages. Trade partners who had once seen Boeing as a preferred supplier began shifting toward Airbus in Europe, Comac in China, and other regional manufacturers eager to seize the opportunity. At the same time, Boeing's procurement managers, who had relied on an intricate network of international suppliers, suddenly found themselves unable to import critical components at manageable costs. The cumulative effect was that production lines in Seattle, Charleston, and elsewhere could no longer function without hemorrhaging money. The tariffs were designed to project economic power, yet they inadvertently struck at the very industries they were supposed to protect. By making it more expensive for U.S. companies to buy from abroad, costs soared for raw materials such as aluminum, steel, and specialized alloys. By triggering retaliation, the policy ensured that Boeing's finished aircraft were now burdened with added tariffs in foreign markets, stripping away their competitiveness. Boeing could not easily reconfigure its operations, because aerospace manufacturing is not a simple matter of substituting one supplier for another. Precision, certification, and years of collaboration bind suppliers together. The company suddenly faced a choice between absorbing catastrophic losses or ceasing production altogether. Inside the U.S., the decision sent ripples far beyond Boeing's factory walls. Thousands of workers who had built their careers around aircraft assembly were suddenly staring at furloughs and layoffs. Communities in Washington State and South Carolina, which had long depended on Boeing wages to sustain local economies, braced for a wave of unemployment. Small businesses that supplied everything from catering services to industrial fasteners felt the knock-on effect. The closure of production was not just a Boeing problem, it was a national economic shock. A case study in how tariffs ricochet through supply chains and labor markets. Internationally, Ortberg's statement reinforced the perception of an America retreating from its role as a reliable trade partner. Airlines from Asia to the Middle East began recalibrating their strategies, wary of placing new orders with a company whose ability to deliver was suddenly in question. Governments that once cultivated close aerospace ties with the U.S. turned to alternative suppliers, some out of necessity and others as a political response to Trump's aggressive policies. The geopolitical stakes of aviation, often overlooked, became starkly apparent. Aircraft purchases are not merely commercial deals. They are diplomatic gestures, symbols of alignment and trust. The tariffs had made those gestures politically costly. The disruption also raised profound questions about industrial resilience in a globalized age. Boeing, despite its immense size and resources, proved unable to insulate itself from political shocks. Its predicament highlighted the extent to which modern manufacturing is interdependent. A wing fabricated in one country, avionics designed in another, engines produced in yet another, all came together only because open trade made it feasible. Tariffs tore at this web, exposing the fragility beneath the surface. What Ortberg revealed was not only Boeing's crisis, but also the vulnerability of any large-scale manufacturer built on global supply chains. From a financial perspective, the shutdown threatened to unravel Boeing's already delicate balance sheet. Still recovering from the reputational and economic fallout of the 737 MAX crisis, the company had pinned much of its future on regaining trust and accelerating production. The sudden halt meant billions of dollars in deferred revenue, disrupted contracts, and potentially massive penalties owed to airlines left without promised aircraft. Investors who once saw Boeing as a stable cornerstone of American industry now faced deep uncertainty. Share prices swung violently, and credit agencies whispered of downgrades, fearing that the company's debt levels could spiral without steady income from plane deliveries. Beyond Boeing itself, Ortberg's revelation underscored the broader vulnerability of U.S. manufacturing under tariff-heavy trade policies. Automobile makers, agricultural exporters, and technology firms all faced parallel challenges, though none so dramatically visible as the shuttered Boeing assembly lines. For decades, policymakers had celebrated globalization as a force that lowered costs and expanded markets. Now, the sudden reversal illustrated how deeply entrenched that model had become. Undoing it, even with the intent of strengthening domestic industries, had the opposite effect, paralyzing production and alienating customers abroad. The shock also reverberated through the defense sector. Boeing's role as a defense contractor meant that its manufacturing capacity was not just a commercial matter, but a national security concern. Aircraft for the U.S. Air Force and Navy relied on the same supply chains that were being squeezed. The question loomed: could America's defense procurement remain secure if commercial aerospace collapsed? While military contracts offered Boeing some stability, they could not offset the scale of losses in the civilian market. The intertwining of commercial and defense production meant that tariffs indirectly touched even the Pentagon's logistical readiness. The human element of the shutdown cannot be overstated. Workers on the shop floor, many of whom had built planes for decades, now faced abrupt uncertainty. Skilled labor in aerospace is not easily redeployed. Machinists, engineers, and technicians with highly specific expertise found that their skills were tied to a sector suddenly frozen. The pride of contributing to iconic aircraft turned to anxiety about mortgage payments and college tuition. For entire communities, the grounding of production meant the grounding of futures once thought secure. On the global stage, Ortberg's disclosure amplified tensions already simmering between the U.S. and its trade partners. In Europe, where Airbus stood ready to capitalize, officials quietly celebrated a strategic advantage handed to them by Washington's policy choices. In China, where COMAC sought to break into international markets with its C-919 aircraft, the development was hailed as proof that American dominance could be eroded. The trade war had shifted from abstract disputes over tariffs on steel or soybeans to tangible victories and losses in one of the most prestigious and strategic industries on Earth. For U.S. consumers and businesses alike, the Boeing crisis served as a visceral example of how trade wars translate into everyday consequences. Airfare prices, already under pressure from volatile fuel costs, began to climb as airlines delayed expansion or were forced to buy more expensive planes from non-U.S. manufacturers. Cargo carriers, which depend on Boeing freighters, found their options constrained. Businesses that relied on affordable global imports saw costs rise in parallel, compounding the inflationary pressures already building across the economy. What began as a policy slogan about fairness in trade evolved into tangible strains on households and companies. Kelly Ortberg's revelation also cast a long shadow over the credibility of U.S. corporate leadership. Executives in other sectors watched closely, recognizing that if Boeing could be brought to its knees by tariffs, no multinational corporation was immune. The assumption that scale and market share guaranteed resilience was shattered. What mattered most was the ability to navigate political landscapes that had become as important as financial or technological innovation. The Boeing story thus became a case study in corporate vulnerability to geopolitical shifts. Political logic was clear. By punishing Boeing, foreign governments signaled that tariffs would carry visible costs in America's own backyard. For Boeing, the result was paralysis. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Boeing halting production after Trump's tariff policies? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.